Lake Show channel here over at SubScribestar. So if you have to change everything about Disney to be politically correct, I kind of look at it and go, well, what's the point of continuing with anything? Disney is adapting itself for modern sensibilities, i.e. the snowflake NPCs. And I understand why when I was a kid, older people didn't watch TV. It was just for kids and kind of slow adults. But now it's worse than that mindless white noise in the background. It's toxic propaganda telling you to sterilize your kids and boys can be girls sorts of things. So everything in pop culture is crap, and that's an understatement. And it makes you wonder what the average IQ of the viewers are. If you have to change everything about something, in this case, Haunted Mansion, one of their displays or whatever they call it, then, I mean, what's to be politically correct, and what's the point? Like, what are you left with if it has no resemblance to what the original was? It ends up becoming nothing. It's just pure consumer, shiny object, soy slop, Funko Pop consumerism for the NPC to go there and do the thing and take pictures with a selfie stick of other NPCs at approved globalist bread and circuses displacement activities in a culturally sensitive manner and get the t-shirt that proves you were there. Most things about Disney are derivative nonsense. They're just mindless garbage for the kids, but they were harmless back in the day, and people used to understand it wasn't real. It was just, cartoons and movies and plushy dolls for kids, but they were based on usually European stories, and it wasn't bad. It was, I guess, somewhat neutral, or it wasn't as actively bad as compared to the stuff today, really across the board, anywhere you look in the mainstream. People knew it was just commercial American garbage, and I don't mean that in a bad way exactly. America was a young country, and things take thousands of years to develop. Now, the demographics are changing too fast for there to be any stability, so it's just a commercial zone and not a country, which is what their intent was all along. And Europeans used to complain about the Amerification of things, or the Californication of things. Fast food going throughout Europe, and or even Levi jeans a long time ago, and they would have been wise to put a embargo on all that American quote unquote culture, because it's not American culture. It's a handful of NGO billion-dollar companies who are pushing this. And someone showed an example of what Levi jeans did to European fashion, and it absolutely destroyed it within a course of a couple of years, where people used to every different country and different region had their own fashions, and then everyone wanted to be like the Americans because Hollywood was pushing this image of people in these jeans, and suddenly it's like almost overnight all the clothing culture and the fashion just went out the window, and they're just selling this American garbage, and it's like what they lost is just incalculable. Even France was trying to keep out like fast food restaurants, and people didn't understand, and it shows you the power of a McDonald's corporation, that they were able to force France to take fast foods. Like you would have been better. Like they're hills to die on, and all of Europe would have been better off if they said, yeah, we don't want anything from America. Now I understand that. Anyway, so now half of yeah, it's okay to celebrate somebody chopping somebody's husband's head off, because I mean that's happened throughout his history. Lizzie, is this a Lizzie Borden thing? I don't know if they had a thing for that. 40 whacks with an axe. It's like the stuff we had as kids, and you think our stuff is Gen X stuff is horrific. You look at like German folk tales or European folk tales in general about being eaten alive by witches or thrown in ovens or whatnot. That's like lost in the Black Forest and eaten by wolves. The thing is, now half of we're gonna bring those stories back. Isn't there a guy in Comicsgate who does like the Black Forest comic? What's that guy's name? I think he was a firefighter in 9/11. He's on Instagram. Anyway, so now half of the Disney audience is for adults who think that they're this. I guess I should pause the video and probably look up his name. Mike? Is it like it's not Mike Barron? Who's that guy? Somebody will know his name in the comments. Half a Disney audience is for adults who think that they're stars of a reality show. And it isn't like Disney families used to be decades ago, where the families went and it was a family tradition and it was, for the kids. Now it's single NPCs who are pretty well married to social media. They are the most insufferable people on earth. They live with a selfie stick in one hand. Everything, I mean, which you took it away from them, like TikTok going away for like 12 hours. It went away for 12. I don't know how it got back so quick. Uh, it went away for 12 hours, and people were going through withdrawals over it. Everything must be done for these people. The world must accommodate them. Everything must change for their sensitivities in quotes, because it's not real exactly. So they can virtue signal now on Blue Sky, and it used to be on, I don't know, Tumblr, and then Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. But it seems like they pretty well are going to Blue Sky, which is kind of the next big left-wing app. About what, hecking great people they are, and the need to have dopamine flourished on them by bringing something to other people's attentions. And the thing is, even other SJWs hate SJWs. And I have a Blue Sky account. I don't remember what my name is, but the passive aggressiveness of left-wingers to left-wingers, like they have this color hierarchy, and a trans hierarchy, and a gay hierarchy, and you get all these points assigned to you. It's just, I mean, it's absolute nonsense. So, no, we don't need to change things for modern sensitivities. These NPCs need to stop being such pussies, which is asking the impossible, because they've been virtue signaling for so long that they kind of believe all this nonsense until there's another shiny object to take them away for it. Or like, I remember, was it Myers who said, like years ago, a lot of these people need a war. They need, like, this, all this stuff is just first world problems. There was a show on, someone was pointing out, there's a girl maybe on YouTube who's morbidly obese, and she has a channel where she goes on rides and she shows you what rides the morbidly obese can go on. And it's absolutely horrific, because you're eating yourself to death, and you're showing people that, like, that should not be acceptable, which is probably, I don't know if you're supposed to say that on YouTube, but I mean, it'd be like, where can I shoot heroin at the park? Because that's just my lifestyle choice, guys. I need to shoot heroin. Oh, well, here's the heroin shooting stations where you can get clean needles. Well, that's insane. All this is insane. It's like, well, if you're 400 pounds, and this girl was, your life expectancy is probably the same to someone who's got a hard drug problem. It's a lot of hot words for YouTube video. No, we shouldn't change things for these people. They kind of believe this stuff. I mean, I guess maybe it's like the amount of obese people we have now, where it's people. What you focus on are the things you move towards. And if there was a nationwide push for health, then and mainstream social media was as censorious to the other thing is, like, not just the obese, but the other end of the spectrum, like Eugene Clooney. She Twitch or something, or I think she's got some YouTube channels. Like, how does a social media company in good platform allow the platforming, in good consciousness, allow the platforming of either one of those, the morbidly obese or the anorexic? It's like they kicked off all these right wing, Red Ice and all these other type of channels, Jared Taylor and stuff, back in 2018. But then they have a girl starving herself to death, or people overeating themselves. It's like that. None of this makes sense. It's almost as if it's like, it makes sense once you kind of look at the purpose of the thing is what it does. Anyway, anything that gives them a chance to toss out some of their Frankfurt School buzzwords about protecting and marginalized and oppressed people, all that kind of nonsense. They're desperate to get on Blue Sky and show their comrades that they're calling out injustice, as long as it's in America and not the Middle East or Africa or Latin America or Asia or anything. Where child brides in Iraq I was just in the news today about, they lowered the age of child brides for girls to like 9 years old or something. For one religion, like the Sunnis is 9, and for the Shia it's 15 or something like that. But one of the numbers was actually 9 years old, that doesn't seem to get their attention. An injustice somewhere is an injustice everywhere. Well, I guess that doesn't apply when it involves a brown person as the perpetrator. But a Disney display does bother them. something. There's like some bayou, in the swamp, voodoo witch doctors for one of the Disney movies, probably back in the 50s and 60s, or the hangman's noose triggers them for some reason, or they have to pretend to be triggered by it. So like throughout history, hanging somebody was pretty common practice. It's like it wasn't directed to one group of people, which is what the liberals seem to think. Or there's somebody on Twitter now, like people were talking. There's some Spanish politician, the premier or president, whatever you call him, who wants to make, and like Spain is just a asshole where the unemployment's like 25% or something. I think it's actually the worst country in Europe. He's very concerned about Elon Musk and Trump. And he said something like he wants to have anonymity taken away from social media, which actually I kind of think is a good way, because that would be the ultimate putting your foot on the gas, accelerate things. And to see the workarounds on that would be fantastic. People would be sending like Morse code and whatnot, but people are talking about how important it was for the founding fathers to have anonymous communications, and the need for that. And like there were people in the comments who didn't know the history of that, of those what were one of the guys' pen names. They had a bunch of nonsense pen names because they had to be anonymous for their own protection. And like there were people who really didn't know the history of that. Anyway, so this article is almost right on the point where they're talking about having to accommodate everyone's sensitivities, and that's not quite accurate, obviously, and change things to the point where all the spice is taken out and the ride is pointless, the story is pointless. It's not a voodoo witch doctor in the swamp. It's a diverse and inclusive trans, lesbian, poxwalks, herbalist of the woodlands. Nothing makes sense because it has to be changed to accommodate the brainwashed college kids who are just parroting what their Marxist professors told them, to the point where it has no connection to the original story. It's just at the level of shiny objects presented by men in dresses on the way to get 1,000-calorie sugar drink for $30 in the Star Wars cafe. And I think there's a bigger picture I'm going to try to articulate. This straw man necessity of pretending to have to change the past to erase history, even if it's something as silly as a tourist park. It's sustaining the globalist reconstruction of history. They're destroying the past. Remember in Star Wars, what's the guy's name? He said, kill it if we have to. They're trying to tell the world it's not Mike Barron's. What's that? In this case, that the old Disney history, I think he's a writer, was objectionable, and modern Disney is improving the mistakes of the past. And you see the analog throughout the West with the enrichers destroying history that doesn't belong to them. As the demographics change, they have no connection to it. Why would they care? It's our strength. When throughout history has that ever been true? Oh, it's never been true. That's what gaslighting is. So they're actually destroying the past are a political framing that the Walt Disneyland of Disney is out of date and must be changed so much that it's unrecognizable, except that the old Disneyland is what made it so massively successful. And this new Disneyland, as shown by Disney, shown by their bombing woke movies, is not what the audience wants, because the audience, and this is the great part, is so objective, you can see what the movie returns are. They're not paying to watch these movies. That like people, they make these movies, you roughly know the budget, and for Disney movies now, they're huge, and the numbers just don't support these movies. They've had a string of bombing movies, which for Disney, every production company has bombs, but they've had a lot over the past 5 years. So Disney doesn't actually have to just change these displays for modern sensibilities. They want to. If they left them alone, they'd be even more successful. Most of the crowd is not into Bob Iger's globalist propaganda. Disney is pretending that this is the only way to go, but that's not true. People don't need warnings, trigger warnings, before watching old movies. Intelligent people accept that movies are products of their time. Or they should, but it doesn't seem like there's as many. It's not just intelligent, but mentally balanced people as there used to be. But people pretend to need trigger warnings for Song of the South, and they pretend to get offended, and this causes a feedback loop where everyone is pretending to have to take these adult babies seriously. Disney didn't have to change into full-time woke. They're a massive media company. People aren't changing Disney. Disney is changing the cattle by way of repetition of a narrative. And this division is getting wider every day, where the SJWs live in this Disney universe where cartoons need trigger warnings and everything is race swapped. How well did the Indian version of Peter Pan do, or any one of their various movies, or their 100-year anniversary movie or animation? They used a non Euro princess to tell their blonde man bad stories, which doesn't make sense because knights in shiny armor and castles and even the costumes of royalty in the movie, those gossamer gowns and tiaras and all that kind of stuff, that's all from Europe from like hundreds of years ago. It doesn't make sense to have non-European people put on the accoutrements. People are not fungible, but Disney's not a family-friendly entertainment company. They're making globalist propaganda. They didn't have to go down this path of treating adults like children, and nobody thinks it's odd that all the mainstream media and pop culture companies, from Disney to Warner Brothers to whoever else, they're all on the same page, and it's not selling, and nobody puts it together and see like, oh, it just doesn't add up. Like, why wouldn't Amazon or Netflix come out with go against the grain, like throw the dice, gamble? All these companies, all of the pop culture companies are super politically correct. Why don't we make some kind of South Park type of thing where we just put the foot to the gas and just go mask off on and have a lot of fun with, like, on Amazon or something, some kind of parody show where it's really politically incorrect. Not one company has done that, and nobody that doesn't like when the market where there's like a vacuum, but it's a hard vacuum because it's enforced by borders where all the companies are avoiding this thing. That doesn't make sense. That's not organic, and that's the point. It's not woke market forces driving woke incorporated. Money is not their driving motive. You can't look at the objective numbers yourself. They're doing this because it's their religion. They're changing society for the worse. They're not reflecting it. That was always a lie. Not showing a scene of a bride and an axe murderer doesn't change anything that happened in the past, but it prevents people from learning about it in a context older generations used to understand. And outside of Disney, these golems destroying history of a past country that they could never create, so they destroy the history of it. They say, oh, well, it's still in books, it's still in museums, but the statues are part of the people's response to history and how they like for the end of the Civil War, how they wanted to get the country together to move on. By destroying them, the savages have said that the inanimate objects, and that's what you are if you're just, what was it, Al-Qaeda or ISIS or something? What did they do when they get controlled? They went through the museums and they destroyed all the icons and artwork and sculptures. And like, what did the modern communist left do? It's like they did the exact same thing. They had to destroy history. Every day has to be day zero. But the thing is, like, all that history, those physical objects are history. By destroying them, they said that the inanimate objects bother them, all because some junkie criminal who put a Liberty device to a pregnant woman because he died of a fentanyl overdose. If you don't have these objects, the icons of the history of the country, then that country is over. And it is. America is just an economic zone. The country really finally ended about 2020. And Disney's a part of it. There were always other theme parks that were just generic rides for kids. It wasn't coherent, cohesive. It didn't have a through line, a narrative through. It was just a collection of rides and stuff. Disney was different. It was tied into an animation and movie universe. The kids grew up with those characters. Disney had a bunch of IPs, all the way back from Fantasia with Mickey Mouse, and the kids grew up with these characters and stories in a way that other theme parks were just rides and just kind of generic stuff. But they're pretending that all this stuff is offensive. And here's the thing: if they didn't do this changing of the past, this Fahrenheit 451 meets 1984, it'd be the one company saying that the emperor has no clothes. Instead, they'd rather go out of business which is the direction they're headed in. I know, as crazy as it sounds, but the stuff lately is just not selling. They would rather go into Chapter 11 than turn things around. The thing about changing to not be offensive to anyone isn't true. It's not to anyone of European descent, which means that everything from pop culture is going to end up with that anti-white stereotype, which is exactly what has happened across the board, which is why you look like white men are stupid in commercials. That Twitter account he goes through and really shows you. People send him in these commercials, but you can see it in movies. Commercials, you really see it. But you see it in movies, you see it in comic books, you see it and basically even in music, they'll have lyrics that before you go down the rabbit hole, you won't notice the lyrics. But I was one thinking of it's I think a Bloodhound Gang, and there's a line in there about he's a stupid white guy or something. And it's like now, years later, I think that lyric and go, that's odd. And then there's a Sublime lyric where he's describing a struggle snuggler, or the singer's describing a struggle snuggler, and he describes him as and the singer actually later died of an OD. And somebody I guess knew the people in the band who was telling me the background story. It's pretty much exactly what you expected with the producer guy, but the lyric is like blonde hair and light blue eyes, and even at the time, 30 years ago when that song came out, it stuck in my mind like something's wrong here. Why did you describe them? Because they wanted you, for two reasons. They wanted you to make sure that you knew to direct your hatred. Like, this is what these date attackers look like. Blonde hair and light blue eyes. Statistically, they don't. Like, not at all. But they also want you to know that it's not what these other groups. So they were very, but it wasn't, apparently it wasn't him that put the lyric in there. It was his producer that kind of twisted his arm there. And then I think the guy passed of a heroin overdose or something. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. A lot of hot words in here. And I will see you guys all next episode. Yes? No?